First, take a look at what your passions are. What do you truly love to do? We always say, what would you do if you weren't a physician? What would you do if you weren't a surgeon? Think about that. Also, beyond just what your passions are, what is your skill set that you already have? Just to get started, find what you're passionate about, find what your skill set is, and then in that Venn diagram, where does that overlap? And then just one step at a time.
Hello there and welcome everybody. I'm Dr. John Chuback, and I'd like to invite you to another episode of the Business of Better podcast, where we talk all things healthcare related entrepreneurship. And today we have a very lovely and wonderful guest, Dr. Alexandra Hill, who is a doctor of physical therapy down in Florida. And I don't want to give too much away with a long introduction because I want to get right into the heart of the matter. Dr. Alex Hill, welcome to the Business of Better podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited to be here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Um, Alex, if you would tell our viewers a little bit about your clinical background, but I want to get right into your entrepreneurial aspirations and all those things that you've already started to do and are continuing to build on.
Yes, absolutely. So I've been a physical therapist in the outpatient world for about 11 years. I went to University of Florida for PT school, so go Gators. And then I did my residency in women's and pelvic health at Duke University, so go Blue Devils. Have some good sports teams right now.
Yeah.
And so I've specialized in pelvic health, oncology, and lymphedema as well as lipedema for all genders for all these 11 years. And in that time, my practice has really evolved to be more into the business and entrepreneurial side, which I never imagined or thought that I would do. So it's crazy to think how much has changed in these 11 years.
Yeah. My father was an obstetrician and gynecologist, and he's no longer with us, rest his soul. But I don't ever really recall him talking about pelvic health as such with that moniker or that title really ever. Now, obviously, his entire career was um, dedicated in one way or another to pelvic health, I suppose. But
Mhm.
when is it, that pelvic health as such with that title became a specified field in healthcare? Because I hear so much about it today.
Yeah, so especially in the physical therapy world, we've had in our professional academy, the American Physical Therapy Association or APTA, we had this section on women's health, and that's been around for at this point probably close to 50 years. But with that being said, it's really evolved over time, and we actually went through a name change, and now it's called the Academy of Pelvic Health to be more inclusive of everything that we do. So when we talk about women's health, this is really looking at all of the different health conditions and changes that go on throughout a woman's lifespan, from puberty to during pregnancy and postpartum through menopause. So these very unique areas of healthcare that are specific to women or people assigned female at birth. And that's in contrast to now it's really expanded to I see men. I have some colleagues that specialize in pediatric pelvic health. We treat the different bowel conditions, bladder conditions, pelvic pain conditions that aren't necessarily experienced by only one group of individuals. And so that's really now where the term has evolved to become more pelvic health. And even more recently, right now for physical therapists, it's board certified in women's health. And there was just a motion that got passed with our House of Delegates that has now it's going to be updated to board certified in women's and pelvic health, again to kind of pay tribute to some of those more specific nuances and conditions that are seen among women, but also kind of capturing all those other conditions that we do treat.
Yeah, interesting. And it certainly seems that um, we have overlap in our clinical fields. Myself, as a vascular surgeon specializing in venous and lymphatic disorders, we now know that there are many venous and lymphatic issues related to pelvic health, pain syndromes
Mhm.
and dyspareunia and things like this. Um, what part of your practice would you say is related to venous and lymphatic disorders?
My schedule really kind of ebbs and flows, but in an ideal world, or typically on average, I see about 50% of patients that are pelvic health, and then 50% that are oncology or lymphatic or venous insufficiency, pelvic congestion syndrome, lipedema. So it's kind of a 50-50 split, but there, as you said, there's certainly a lot of overlap. I'll see somebody for pelvic health where I notice, hey, like that looks like maybe some venous insufficiency. And then once we finish pelvic health, we transition and get a new referral to address the swelling or vice versa, where, we're always screening for pelvic health conditions. Not unusual to have pelvic health disorders or conditions that are also seen with, especially lipedema. When we look at some of the connective tissue disorders, and we see a lot of overlap with pelvic health issues as well. And so, a lot of times, these patients are experiencing both of these symptoms and conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been my experience as well. Now, in my hand here, I am on OncoPelvicPT.com. And, in preparation for our discussion today, because prior to today we didn't know each other, but you came very highly recommended to the program. I was turned on to your website, and I said, "Well, let me just take a look around and see what Alex is doing and so forth." And it brings us right into our discussion of entrepreneurship, because I have to tell you, I was so impressed with or I am so impressed with your website, OncoPelvicPT.com. So tell us about, for example, when I scroll down here, it asks, "Are you a rehab professional?" And then there's an option for clinical courses, one-on-one coaching, a clinician newsletter. Then it says, "Are you a cancer survivor?" E-guides and webinars, watch YouTube, read the blog. Do you have pelvic health concerns? Watch YouTube, read the blog, recommended products, etc. So this just smacks of great clinical care, but at the same time comes across very professionally, obviously, but at the same time is clearly very entrepreneurial, it would seem to me. So tell us some of your entrepreneurial projects, ambitions, and things like that.
Sure. So, I've been practicing full time as a hospital clinician for all 11 years. But in 2020, of course, we all know what happened in 2020. The world kind of stopped. Even in healthcare, it was our jobs weren't necessarily safe. And for me, in that year, there was so much negativity, there was so much fear and misinformation and disinformation and uncertainty that I felt like I had to do something. And so I looked at my own skill set and what I love to do in terms of the pelvic health, the oncology, lymphedema. I also love social media, the good, the bad, and the ugly of it. And I thought, well, let's just start an Instagram page. And that's really where OncoPelvic PT was started, was just putting out posts on Instagram. But the more that the page grew, the more that I saw that of how much of a need there was for this information from trusted individuals of like healthcare providers versus just an influencer who, doesn't have that type of training or is out just to, make a buck or whatever. And so from there, it's grown now to a YouTube channel. I have resource guides, as you mentioned, for patients. I have monthly newsletters, both for clinicians and for patients or people that just want more general health information. And even from that, just that kind of visibility of being online, I've been able then to expand what I'm able to offer. And again, what I am passionate about is really advancing optimal care for these pelvic health and oncology and lymphedema conditions. And so now I'm also doing consulting for companies or helping with, medical company social media pages, doing training. I do coaching for clinicians that are newer to these areas of pelvic health and oncology. And so I've really expanded out from there. Um, I noticed also with continuing education courses, There were just some things that were lacking or things that I felt that could be more robust. There just really aren't a lot of courses that overlap between pelvic health and oncology, even though we're seeing more and more and more cancer survivors, and we know the impact of a lot of these cancer treatments impacting their pelvic health. Why don't we have more courses? And so again, I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it. Like, let's make some courses. I've done a lot of teaching in the past at different conferences with PT programs and, collaborating with other disciplines. And so again, just trying to find things that were in my wheelhouse, in my skill set that I felt passionate about, and just kind of jumped on those. And then now, coming up in the next month, at the end of September, I'll be actually opening up my own practice as well and starting to see patients through there. So exciting times. As I said at the beginning, it's been a whirlwind of things that I never thought that I would ever do, but it's been incredible and an amazing journey.
Oh, fantastic. Good for you. Now, you touched on something there right at the end that I'd like you to expound upon a bit. We have many colleagues, physicians, nurses, physical therapists, technologists. So many of us are so deeply involved with clinical practice. Um, how, what advice would you give for a young person? And I always make a caveat there. It doesn't have to be a particularly young person. Sometimes physicians can be and clinicians can be in practice 20 or 30 years before maybe an idea hits them, or they
Hmm.
become disgruntled with what they're doing, or if not disgruntled, dissatisfied, looking for
Hmm.
something new, something to change up, day to day life and practice to make it more interesting. What advice would you give someone who has an interest in doing something entrepreneurial, and how to get them kind of, out of the starting blocks and into the race, so to speak?
I would say first take a look at what your passions are. What do you truly love to do? We always say, what would you do if you weren't a physician? What would you do if you weren't a surgeon? Think about that. And also beyond just what your passions are, what is your skill set that you already have? We're not trying to recreate the wheel necessarily as entrepreneurs, right? Right now, I'm also working on another project with my husband, and we're creating a pelvic product. Right now, we're still in the development stage. Um, so it
Good
is
for
kind of
you.
recreating the wheel.
Yeah, that's
But I
amazing.
mean, just to get started, find what you're passionate about, find what your skill set is, and then in that Venn diagram, where does that overlap? And then just one step at a time. So is it getting a Instagram handle? Is it creating a LinkedIn business page? Is it just daydreaming and writing out what your potential name is going to be or what your mission statement's going to be? And using that as kind of your North Star and using that with every decision that you make to get to what that goal is. But I think again, finding your passions and what your skill set already is, and then finding that overlap would be the first thing to just get started with.
Now, that's great advice, amazing advice. And we talk about that quite a bit here on the show, and I talk about
Mhm.
that quite a bit in my, personal and professional life. That, the old saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. You've got to get going. You've got to start. In fact, the logo for my one company, Chuback Education, is an elephant with a bite taken out of its rear end, sort of, because I love that expression. How do you eat an elephant? The answer is one bite at a
One
time.
bite at a time.
Right? So we have to
That's
begin.
perfect.
Right, we have to begin someplace, and that's exactly what you put your finger on. Now, something that I'm interested in your specific situation, I don't know that we've discussed before on the program, but I think is a really valuable discussion. You're working right now in a full-time position, hospital-based. What has their reaction been, with regard to your specific employer, um, in terms of your doing outside projects, entrepreneurship? Is that folded into your contract? Is that something that people have to look carefully about when they take a job? What limits are there if you're employed, if you want to do something entrepreneurial? Talk to us about that.
Sure. So I'll put it this way. I'm working about 60 to 80 hours a week for the last 5 years.
Right.
So with my full-time job in the hospital, that is strictly that clinical care. I'm a team lead or a clinical specialist, so I work on program development, different projects, working multidisciplinary, being on tumor boards. All of that is just that is my job. Anything else that I'm doing outside of that, specifically with my, side business, that is on my own time. I don't do any of that on the clock, so to speak, or anything like that. So that's all my evenings, my mornings, my weekends. So it does take a lot of, hustle and grind and dedication and very good time management to not get burnt out trying to get the side hustle going, because it really is a marathon, it's not a sprint to kinda get something like this off the ground. Um, so my employers I've always been upfront, with this business. I've been in two positions, while I've been running OncoPelvic PT, and like I said, I keep it completely separate. I don't mention or talk about any patients or testimonials, anything on my workday with my channel because that's a completely separate business. They've always been supportive, understanding with the understanding that it is completely separate time.
Yeah, and I think that that's wonderful. And but I do think, based on my experience with almost 25 years in practice, that I have met some full time, especially in academic centers, where
Okay.
clinicians can be hampered by their contracts. So my advice would be, it sounds like Dr. Hill is in an excellent situation, although she
Yes.
has to work very, very hard. But if you do want to do something entrepreneurial, read your contract very, very carefully
Mhm.
and make sure that they're not going to limit you. Typically, my experience has been that big institutions, academic centers, et cetera, they won't limit you from doing anything. They'll just say whatever money you make is ours. So
Right.
that so that'll take the wind out of somebody's sails quickly, generally speaking. So I would warn against that. The other thing that I would say, Alex, that resonates with me as somebody who obviously went through a lot of training, many, many years between medical school, general surgery, cardiovascular, and so forth. Most of us who are high achievers, I guess there are a few exceptions out there, but we're very, very hard workers. And I think we're
Mhm.
also long term thinkers. We're not looking for an overnight success. And I think a lot of what the younger folks are um, seeing today through social media, et cetera, is that we should expect to be able to get, a MacBook or something and go to some exotic beach in Tahiti and make $8 million a month selling, I don't know, conch shells or whatever on the internet. So
That's not a
that
thing? That's a
it
thing. Come
it
on,
may
Dr.
be a
Chuback.
thing. I'm not saying it's not a thing. I guess these stories, there are some that are true, but I just don't. If you're coming to the business of better podcast to learn that from Dr. Chuback and probably most of his guests, I have a feeling you're going to be disappointed here. So I. I always say success is easy. Just ask any failure. They say, I could have
Yep.
done this. I could have done that. I had an idea for a business. I had an idea for a pelvic product, but I didn't see it through for whatever reason, and they're full of excuses. So it sounds like that 60 to 80 hours per week is something that I'm very, very familiar with. And I think that part of our program is to be real with people
Mhm.
and to be forthcoming and to say, there may be some shortcuts that work, but we haven't shared a lot of them yet on this program. It's been mostly about commitment, dedication,
Yep.
and as Dr. Hill said, passion for something that
Mhm.
you love. And the reason the show is called The Business of Better, because it is a business related show, but it's always about providing better service, a better product, better care, and making people better because we're in the healthcare industry. So tell us, have you been able to, at this early stage in some of these projects, actually monetize some of these projects?
Yes. So my YouTube, I was able to get monetized. That also took a while, and learning from that, I had a, decent sized following, a smaller but decent sized following on Instagram. And I thought, oh, well, this will be easy. Like, I'll be able to monetize into YouTube pretty quickly. No, it took like a year to get to that point. So, things never happen as quickly as we oftentimes expect them to. But a lot of times, once you get to that first, kind of landmark of 1,000 subscribers, then it starts to really So, really increase from there. So between that, affiliate agreements, or doing, sponsored posts, and even with those, I'm very, very deliberate on vetting who the company is, what the product is. I have my own little spreadsheet for what I use for, okay, is it evidence based? What's their track record? Like all that kind of stuff to make sure that I'm partnering with companies that I believe in, that I've used, or that, I've had patients that have used, or other providers have used. So that does assist with some of the income as well. My continuing education courses, that is a little bit of an investment because I get them approved, pre-approved for continuing education units for physical therapists across the US. So it does have a financial component to it. But with that, now that my courses are getting more popular, then I have started to monetize on those as well. But I'd say those are the primary things that I've monetized on so far, and just like I said, doing contract work as well.
Great. Tell us what is that's all absolutely amazing. And there's a few things there that I think a lot of our colleagues could do relatively easily. For example, some of the working with other brands, other companies, representing products that you really believe in, that you've vetted, that you've looked at the science and those kinds of things. I think those are really wonderful opportunities. There probably not enough of us have taken full advantage of, just because we don't see ourselves in that light. But tell
Mhm.
us now about your own practice that you're looking to open. What's your dream there? What's your vision, and how are you going to make that a reality?
So, it's going to be a virtual, appointments are going to be offered. So I can see anybody in the state of Florida. I've also kept my licenses in Maryland, North Carolina, and Texas. And then I'll also be offering in-person appointments as well. And then I'll be doing mobile appointments as well. Because that's one thing that I've noticed, especially with these particular populations of pelvic health and oncology, especially lymphedema, is sometimes it can be hard to get physically to the clinic. Maybe they are neutropenic, maybe they have wounds, maybe they just have mobility issues or transportation issues. And in rehab world, we just really don't have a lot of options in these specialty areas that's not home health, or that's not kind of limited in what people are able to do. So I want to be able to offer that to people who need it, and going to their home or to their work, to their gym, and working with them in these different capacities. But also being able to offer, not just such a medical clinical space. I want it to be warm. My parents are amazing where I'm sharing a space with my mom. She's a artist. And so they've been helping getting the space ready. We just painted it. We chose these really warm colors. We're choosing some wood. Like, we're just making it a really healing space where you come in and you feel comfortable. You feel that there's hope, and that you can get a hold of what your symptoms are, your health condition. And the other thing that I feel very strongly about with starting this practice is having the flexibility to have different lengths of appointments. I might have somebody that maybe just needs a quick check-in. Maybe they're getting close to being able to discharge and they don't need the full hour. Maybe they just need a 30-minute appointment. And so we can do that easily versus in a larger hospital system, we have, these 45-minute blocks, and that's your time that you have. If somebody is coming from out of town, I have a lot of people where I'm at in Jacksonville who are coming from Georgia, from, halfway to the Panhandle, going down to South Florida, that come to see me because of these specialty areas that I have. And it's hard to find people that have these specialty areas. And so if people are coming in from out of town, or they're coming in for maybe a couple weeks of cancer treatment and they need intensive work, being able to offer that flexibility or longer appointment times, or just again, just kind of a safe space where you're not surrounded by a whole gym of people and a whole waiting area, just very concierge specialized to that patient and what they need, and really meeting them where they're at.
Yeah, fascinating. So, um, one of the words that you used there was flexibility, and I think that is a great word in practicing clinical medicine and providing care.
Mhm.
But I think it's also a great word in terms of the entrepreneur. I think that you have to be a little, not maybe more than a little, I think you have to be very flexible mentally to change directions, to be adaptable. Um, and what I like in what you're telling me, it sounds like, if I'm not mistaken, a significant part of your practice may be basically telemedicine based. Is that correct?
Yep, telemedicine and then in person as well, but just being able to offer that, and it's really interesting, we're getting more and more research looking at the effectiveness of tele-rehab interventions as well, which is cool.
Yeah, well, that's what I wanted to ask you. Not too long ago, well, it's a couple, 2 or 3 years ago now, probably occupational hazard from me seeing patients and
Mm,
repeatedly scanning a patient with one hand and kind of being in a position and typing with one hand, scanning with one hand, and so forth. I developed, a little bit of rotator cuff problem with my shoulder, and I had a patient who happened to be a really terrific physical therapist, and when she was coming for her, procedures here at the office, she needed a number of procedures, we would actually book it so that she would work on me when she came to the office.
the
We set up a separate.
flexibility.
Yeah, it was great. We set up a separate room, and right after, I would poke her with needles and things and give her, and she'd go, "Now it's your turn," you know?
Right.
So, so, "Let's see what we can do with this shoulder."
Right.
Like, "Ah!" So, that kind of thing. So, I she always made sure she went first and I went second, so it was
Right.
always a revenge, therapy. But,
That's a smart
anyhow,
PT.
I wish I were completely kidding, what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Right.
Anyhow, but why I think it's so fascinating about the flexibility of thinking and thinking outside the box, one might presume, well, physical therapy, I mean, it's right in the name of the specialty. It's physical, right? I have to put my hands on you. I have to manipulate you. I have to do massage therapy, deep tissue, putting on ice packs or heat packs, and so on and so forth. But obviously, what you're telling us, not only in your own experience and your own ambition, but through research, that if I can't get there, you could still help me. Now, how does that work? Just through education and consulting and demonstration of exercises? How does that work?
Yeah, so and like you said, physical therapy, there are certainly I can't do MLD, manual lymphatic drainage for a patient through the video. That would be
Right.
amazing. That would be some cool virtual reality or something.
That's right.
Um, but so especially for like an evaluation, for example, if I have a breast cancer survivor who I'm seeing, I can easily check her range of motion. I can see her posture. I can visually see what the incisions look like. Is there any swelling? Range of motion. And even looking at, I can't necessarily do manual muscle testing where we do our kind of standardized testing of a muscle strength, but I can say, hey, can you get a jug of water or something and try to lift that overhead? So it may not be as clinically accurate with the objective measures. I can't say the exact range of motion degree or strength, but I can say functionally what's going on. There are some other softwares that are available now where you can actually see through the video what somebody's range of motion is now, though. So we can actually capture that, which is pretty cool. Um, we can have them set up the camera facing a treadmill, for example, and see what their walking mechanics look like. So there's a lot of things that we can still assess on the video. And then, as you said, a lot of education, and especially in pelvic health, it's a lot of education. It's a lot of going through diet. How do you sit for a bowel movement? How do you manage stress? What are some sleep hygiene tips? What are bladder irritants? So we can do a lot of education, but we can also, with some of the manual therapy, if they have a partner or somebody at home, there is in certain cases where we can teach their partner or whoever's with them, or even if there's a certain device or tool, how they can do that at home as well. Because I mean, we teach people how to do that anyway in the clinic. Hey, you need to work on this knot in your back, like get a tennis ball, pop it on the wall, massage against that. So there are certain things that we can still teach them to do with the manual therapy, but is telemedicine and telerehab appropriate for everybody? No. Is it a great option for a lot of people? Absolutely. I work with a lot of moms, for example, postpartum. They might be, their first 3 to 6 weeks out, and they think that they can make it, and then they're like, "I'm not ready to leave the baby yet." And say, "Okay, we'll just switch it to a telehealth appointment." Or if childcare, doesn't work out, or if somebody's sick, or, there's so many situations where we don't have to pause therapy or miss therapy for a week or 2 weeks when we can just do a virtual visit and still make gains on what your symptoms are.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense to me because one of the things that I learned about physical therapy was the first time I'd actually been the recipient of physical therapy, although I had sent, and prescribed physical therapy for patients for 2.5 decades, was the first time that I was a patient. Um, it becomes painfully obvious early on that a big part of the healing process and the rehabilitative process is the work that the patient has to do at home by themselves. So
Yep.
yeah, the hands-on part is essential when it's possible. I mean, it's very valuable when it's possible, but if the patient isn't willing to do their exercises, their stretching, their strengthening, etc., at home, their process or progress is going to be very slow and may not even progress. So it
Yep.
makes sense that you could teach and advise a lot of that through telehealth, um, even if you couldn't uh, provide that hands-on piece of it. Now, that brings us to another very important part for the entrepreneur out there, and this includes myself because with the podcasts that I've been doing over the years, the Lymphcast podcast that I did, the Dr. John Chuback channel that we have now on YouTube, I'm getting more and more people from all over the United States calling me, asking me about their lymphedema, lipedema, venous insufficiency, etc. And I haven't really gotten up and running with telemedicine because I'm just so busy here in the clinic and also doing the other things that I do. But have you done any research? Can you give any advice for our viewers who might be interested in any, and if not, I certainly understand, but any software or any programs that you can do these kind of telehealth videos where you're going to be covered from a medical legal point of view? For example, you mentioned a breast cancer patient where you might want to look at the scars. So that would indicate that the patient has to reveal themselves. You have to be able to examine them. What
Mhm.
is your experience there?
In terms of the legal aspect of it?
I guess we're working today through a Zoom-like interface.
Mhm.
We're using Riverside for full disclosure, which is a Zoom-like interface. But my understanding is there are medical-based interfaces like this
Gotcha.
that kind of protect you from, I don't know, hacking or, because it's a private relationship and a private um, encounter between a clinician and the patient.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for clarifying that. So the any type of telehealth, telemedicine, telerehab software that you're using, it has to be encrypted. The hospital systems we have, we typically use MyChart as the EMR that I've typically used, and through there, it is through Zoom, but it's an encrypted Zoom link
I
that they
see.
get through
Okay.
the app. The software that I'm looking at getting for my private practice has an encrypted video call connection through the website. Before we start any type of call, I'll confirm that they're in the state so I know legally I can treat them. If they're in Georgia right now or Alabama or, on vacation in the Bahamas, I can't see you for this visit. So legally for me as a PT in the state of Florida, the patient also has to be in the state of Florida. If
Even if
there's any.
that uh, uh, let me just ask a question. I hate to interrupt, but
No, you're fine.
even if it weren't going through healthcare insurance, if the patient were paying, let's say, out of pocket, could you see someone outside the state, or no? The state regulation is that they have to be within the state.
Each state is different,
Okay,
which makes it tricky. And so there are some states where even the therapist and the patient both have to be in the state versus other state practice acts. For example, I could see somebody in North Carolina while I'm here in the state of Florida. but the patient would have to physically be in the state of North Carolina. So it really varies by state, which can make it tricky, which is another good point, I think, for any new entrepreneur is making sure that you have good legal advice from an attorney. And there are a lot that specialize in healthcare law and healthcare entrepreneurship as well, which is really helpful. But yeah, but for the software, yeah, it definitely needs to be encrypted. On the pelvic health side, a lot of people have this question of like, are you doing the pelvic exam on the video? No, we are not doing the exam on the video. There's ways that we can have them check if they're doing a pelvic floor contraction correctly or something. And some people aren't comfortable with, if they did want to show their incision, that they might not be comfortable doing it on video. And they can always send the video encrypted into the portal itself as well. That's encrypted. So a lot of people will do that if they have a question about what something might look like. They can always send a picture if they're not comfortable or don't want to show it on the camera as well. That's usually what I'll recommend.
This is all great. Great information. And again, some of our viewers may know a lot more about that than I do because they've been working in the hospitals. They may have been doing some telehealth, especially through COVID, et cetera. I
Mhm.
personally haven't had that experience, so I'm learning a lot as usual on these programs. Even though I'm the host of the show, I'm here to learn just along with everybody else. Um, the other thing I would mention, we're going to have a guest on the show, John Matthews, and John is from up in Canada. He's been involved in the orthopedic space his whole career as a salesperson and a rep, and now he's created his own company called Inkwell. I believe it's called Inkwell Health, and um, it's a really fascinating device whereby he creates kind of a semi-permanent tattoo. It's not permanent, but it's a long-lasting ink mark on the knee after knee replacement, and it comes with an app that works through your smartphone or your iPhone, and it's a device that might be of real interest to you, Alex, because that's something that could be used remotely to show range of motion, the amount of swelling,
Mhm.
and things like that. So the reason I bring it up is twofold. One is I think it's great for our guests on our shows to get to know each other and hopefully work together and support each other. But two, it brings to the fore the idea that there are so many great new technologies. We live in a golden age that caring for people remotely, when we can apply some of these great new technologies, just makes it so much easier, don't you think?
Yes, absolutely. And I will definitely be keeping an eye out for that episode.
Yeah, I'll certainly make a personal introduction between you and John. He's a wonderful guy, and he's got a great product. And also, Dr. Andrew Wickline, who's an orthopedic surgeon up in New York State, who's been using that device and kind of made that introduction. And Andrew will be on our show as well. He's got a great mission. He calls it the March to a Million. He wants to have 1 million knee replacement patients treated with um, as close to zero narcotic postoperatively as possible, zero if
Oh,
possible. But I think his big goal is less than 10 pills, which would be quite remarkable because he's
yeah.
a big advocate of managing postoperative swelling. In fact, that's how we came to know each other through VitaSupport MD and using our lymphatic formula and our vein formula
Mm,
because he was wondering if he thought it would be helpful to support the lymphatic and venous system in these uh, joint replacement patient. So that's kind of another story, but it does
mhm.
go back to the idea that one of the wonderful things about this podcast, I think, is how it brings like-minded clinicians together to share their ideas, and hopefully, in the end, we all provide the best possible care to our patients and our communities. So I don't know, Alex. I think as we're coming kind of close to the end of our time, the time always flies. Um, I'd like to have you on the Dr. John Chuback channel one day to talk about all of those issues of pelvic health that you have so much expertise in. I think it would be a fascinating discussion. So the conversation won't end here. But since the main thrust of this podcast, the business of better, is for entrepreneurs in healthcare, um, I'll give you the final word. If you had to give some advice to somebody at any stage of their career who's interested in starting their own business or getting involved in some, outside side hustles and ways to make some extra money by taking care of people. Uh, what are 2 or 3 of your top tips based on your own experience?
I would say so I'm a very risk averse person. And so
I'm sure
starting
I have to tell you, that comes as a shock to me to hear you say that. I would think just the opposite of you.
I'm very risk averse. My father and my husband have been pushing me to start a private practice for years, but for me it's such a big leap to go from a comfortable I know this for 11 years, I know the hospital system, I know how this works. And so to just completely leave that is just
Well,
absolutely
I
terrifying.
have to tell you, I disagree with them because I think you have a terrible personality, and I never think you're gonna make it. Nobody would wanna see you. Obviously kidding. Joking for anybody out there, for the haters, no comments below. It's a joke. She's amazing. She's incredible. She's gonna be a huge success. God,
But I would
can't.
say, I guess in that vein though, do
Yeah,
it scared anyway. I mean, every time I post a YouTube video, I mean, you never know what people are gonna say.
right,
Anytime like I said, my husband and I are developing a product. It could be a total flop, but do it anyway. Do it scared anyway is
right.
I think really the biggest thing because especially in healthcare, and I've heard this with your other guests, we're trained to help people and to cure them, to heal them, to help them on their health journey. We weren't trained on the business side of things or how to be an influencer or how to negotiate contracts with sponsors. And so you're always going to be learning something. It's always going to be new. It could be really scary for you to do it, but do it scared anyway. So I think that's the first thing. And then the second thing I would say is you don't have to jump all in right away. You don't have to jump into the deep end. It's okay to just put your toe in the water just to see, is this maybe the right fit? Is this maybe where I want to go? Or is this like, nope, this is not it. We're going to go to the other pool and we're going to try something else. That's okay too. It's never this, all in thing. Now, if you're all about that, fantastic. That you're probably like my friend who the first time she went in an airplane, she jumped out of it to do skydiving. Her very first time in a plane. Like, if
You're
that's your
supposed to stay in the
personality,
plane.
yeah, exactly. Like, I'm gonna stay up here in the plane with my seatbelt fastened.
Right.
But, if you're that type of person, like, go for it. But if this is scary, like, just take it one step at a time, dip your toe in, and just go from there.
I think that's great advice. One other thing I wanna share with Alex is I love your eyeglasses. Don't ask me why.
Oh, thank you. Oh,
You know what I'm saying? We have good taste, the 2 of us.
yes.
If you don't have these glasses, you can't be on my show. That's rule number 1. Anyway, it's been such a pleasure, to have you on. You're gonna be, and you are already, incredibly successful, but I look forward to, following, your career and, watching all the great things that you do. You're a great inspiration to me personally. There are many things you're doing that, I would like to explore myself, and we're gonna make some wonderful introductions between you and some of the other guests where I already see some great, synergy in your clinical practices and your, um, ambition to provide the best care possible, in the most, humane, and accessible way. Because as you said, many of these patients that we're treating, with lymphedema, lipedema, and these various disorders, wounds and so forth, um, just even, travel, getting to and from the office, mobility is a huge problem. We had Mr. Vikram Ravi Kumar from Sun Scientific on the show recently, and his product that he developed with his father as a vascular surgeon gives the patient so much dignity and
Mm,
autonomy and independence because they don't necessarily have to go to a wound care center or their surgeon a few times a week because they developed a device where they can go ahead and change that dressing at home and only
wow.
have to be seen a fraction of the times just for observation, etc. And part of that could probably be done through telemedicine, telehealth as well. So we live in a
Mhm.
golden
It's
age.
amazing.
Yeah, it really is fantastic, and I'd love to, introduce you to him and his products, and it's one of the best parts of this show is building a community amongst ourselves and sharing our ideas, our expertise, and always with the patient at the center of our thoughts and our motivations and our ambitions to provide healthcare in the best possible way, and that's why we call it the business of better. But with that, Dr. Alexandra Hill, I want to thank you for being on the program, and I look forward to to having you on my other program so we can get much more deeply into the clinical aspects of your practice, your expertise, and your amazing, remarkable training and experience. So, thanks so much for being on the Business of Better podcast with Dr. John Chuback.
Thank you so much for having me on. I look forward to the other one.